morning, good afternoon, good evening. You are watching the Paris Fintech Forum Communities video interview series. I'm Elliott Gotkine, and today I'm joined by the co-founder of SumUp, Marc-Alexander Christ. Great to have you with us.
Hi, Elliott. Thanks a lot for having me on the show.
Great to see you again. So look, before we get cracking, we are going to learn a little bit more about SumUp. So, Mark, you're a point of sales fintech, I suppose, is the most basic description. But in this day and age of all things digital, what does that mean in practice? And how has kind of SumUp evolved, and how does it continue to innovate given all the advances that we're seeing in technology and in financial services?
We started 12 years ago, and we're probably well known to democratize card payment for the long tail for small merchants in the card-present environment. I think all of our listeners should be aware of the white card reader that crops up across Europe and also across Latin America and the US. But from the payment proposition back in the days, we have today evolved into a full ecosystem that is based on three pillars, which one is payment acceptance. That's the biggest one because that's the one we do the longest. Then we ventured into software. We offer point of sale solutions like the register, online stores, invoicing, accounting, loyalty solutions, and so on. And then a third one, which I would label financial services, which is a business account connected with a MasterCard. And we also do some merchant cash advance in that area.
Okay, and you mentioned some of the jurisdictions you're in, US, Latin America, Europe, for example. Give us a sense of the size and scope of the business.
So we are live in 36 countries. That's the whole of Europe, US, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru. And recently we launched Australia. And we are supporting 4 million merchants across the world. And we just announced 1 billion transactions processed annually.
And when you say you support these merchants, are they exclusively with you? Do they use, Square or iZettle or other, POS solutions as well?
I would think they're exclusively with us because they're usually very much the long tail. So think about it, 70% of our merchants are probably sole traders. So you don't necessarily need more solutions, like you don't necessarily have more than one cell phone provider. So yes, we see ourselves as the brain running your business or the technology partner and the financial partner that kind of helps you to focus on what you're best at, serving your customers.
Okay, now I don't want to have any spoiler alerts, but one of the questions we usually ask in our round of rapid fire questions, which comes at the end of our conversation, is whether physical points of sales are going to be a part of the future of finance. I guess you are perhaps ideally placed to help us with that prediction. What are your thoughts on the matter?
Need one word now or several? Because I think it's very much going to be morphed into one, where the distinction between the physical point of sale and the virtual point of sale or the online point of sale is getting closer and closer as we speak. We see a lot of our merchants that do obviously accept card payments with the card reader, but then also for bigger orders have an invoicing product, also accept pre-orders, sell an online store and so on, also serve their merchant with QR codes at the point of sale. So this whole card present, card not present distinction becomes more and more blurry.
Okay, so we've heard about SumUp. Let's now learn a little bit about Marc. So, Marc, you said you founded SumUp 13 years ago, or you co-founded SumUp 13 years ago. What ambitions do you have, not so much for SumUp, but perhaps outside the business for, your life going forward? I know you're still relatively young despite having been there for a dozen years, but what are your ambitions in terms of what you want to do and to achieve?
Well, I'm in my mid-40s now, so I would say still rather young. And SumUp is still a lot of fun. We're growing very, very nicely year over year. And when you think about our development over the last 12 years, it's literally a new company every year. And the potential I see out there in the market is still very, very large. Let's say we're just scraping the surface and there's a lot more to be done there. So I think as long as I can create value at SumUp and people are happy to keep me around, I'm sure I'll be here another 3, 5, 7 years as the world goes forward.
And after those 3, 5, 7 years are over, what is it? You must have things on your bucket list, for want of a better phrase, that you wish to tick off.
So the funny thing is, in my life before, I was very lucky where I already took like a year-long sabbatical twice. So the whole traveling the world and seeing other cultures, I think I did quite a bit, which obviously you would do again if there's a long break coming up. And then the question is probably, I don't think I'm employable, realistically. So either you start a new startup, which then if I'm then in my early 50s, I'm not sure I still have the energy for that one. So the more likely way is probably going down the investor route or helping other founders to be successful.
Okay. And clearly it's a very much a full-time job at SumUp for you. But on a typical weekend or during the holidays, what would we find you doing?
It's usually recovering from the week. And then I have a lot of friends. So I do enjoy obviously meeting friends, restaurants, going out is one big thing. And then also a little bit of sports. Holidays, skiing is a great one. Sailing, if it's summer, any outdoor sports usually works as well.
Very good. All right. Well, we'll look out for you on the slopes in the wintertime. But look, a key part of this interview is to get your take on the future of finance. But first, we are going to take a very quick break, after which we're going to continue our conversation with the co-founder of SumUp, Marc-Alexander Christ. Welcome back. And don't forget, if you're not already a full member of our community, everything you need to join can be found at www.parisfintechforum.com. And now, Marc, let's talk about the future of finance. So, Marc, people have kind of been sounding the death knell for bank branches for many years, and they're still around. And indeed, some banks like JP Morgan are planning on rapidly increasing the number of branches that they have. I suppose a similar sentiment has been expressed towards, physical points of sales. I mean, you've said, you expect kind of things to kind of morph or kind of, join in terms of the digital and physical world. They still seem to be with us, physical points of sales, of course, for now, despite the ability to kind of live without them. Why do you think they are so enduring?
I think people enjoy physical encounters, like shopping at a real merchant in person. Or if you also think about services, restaurant, cafes, and so on. So there's just a lot of, I think the humankind is very much a physical race. So as long as people getting together, I do think some form or shape of a physical point of sale will always be there. And maybe if you now refer to the piece of hardware like the card reader, that might actually disappear over time. But I do think there's still a lot of settings where that's going to take another 5 to 10 years until we have some better solution there.
So maybe instead of reading our cards or even reading our phones, it'll be a bit kind of, Minority Report-esque, where they just kind of read our eyeballs and, have everything connected that way, among other things.
Blood sample.
Okay. And I mean, look, you talked about cards. I mean, I can't remember the last time I only ever get a card out when someone, for some reason, can't take, Apple Pay or something similar. Never use cash, no matter where I am in the world again, unless absolutely necessary, perhaps for the babysitter every now and then. How much time do you think, cards have got left until they go the way of the dinosaurs?
First of all, I think you should educate your babysitter that she'll get more tips with card payments. And we have a very easy solution for that one. So just tell her to sign up for SumUp. I do think the human, let's say, humankind changes rather slow. If you think about it, the integration of the chip card probably happened somewhere around 2000, and until it was really adopted, took probably 5 to 7 years in Europe, while in the US it's still a rather new thing. Contactless is also something that's available for, I would say, 5 to 8 years. Still, take up is rather new. think our friends at Apple do a very good push into the market on that one. So I do think that's happening, but people changing behavior is always something that takes time. And if you think about contactless transactions, they're quite flawless, to be honest. So getting to the next best level above a contactless transaction is not an easy one.
Okay, well, I'll pass on the message to the babysitter and to where I get my dry cleaning done because they only take cash as
I
well.
had the
So,
same. My dry cleaner, after 6 years, finally convinced to also accept SumUp.
well, if your own dry cleaner wasn't using it or couldn't be persuaded, then there wouldn't be much hope for everyone else. But I mean, you mentioned Apple Pay and how that works, and just to be clear, it's not like, oh, that's bad. They're kind of cutting out because ultimately they would need a point of sales terminal in order to transact, and that's presumably obviously good for them. Perhaps not so good for some of the other intermediaries, but also good for whoever's providing the point of sales terminal.
Mhm. So, for example, so there's two things. Apple Pay is you as a customer paying, and there's also no, that's Apple Pay, and there's also Tap to Pay, where on the acceptance side we actually offer card acceptance with a phone, because really that's only like the tip of the iceberg. Where instead of the card reader, you now use the phone as a physical device, but there's the whole regulatory onboarding, processing of the card, risk and fraud, paying out to the merchant, having a software solution for the merchant. That I do think we probably still create 99% of the value in that transaction.
Right. And I think there has been talk in the US, certainly, and maybe this is, a perennial conversation about, cards, what the Visas, the MasterCards, the Amexes of this world, and the amount that they charge in terms of commission and ensuring that amount is lower, because I think it's much larger in the United States, unless I'm mistaken, compared with Europe. Is that something that you would be supportive of, that would likely perhaps lead to more card-based transactions and more business for you?
I actually think we're the ones driving that change. When we started out, it was probably 10 times more expensive than it is today with our solution for small merchants to accept card payments. And we do believe to support small merchants and allow them to kind of thrive and survive. We want to give them a lot of value at the cheapest price. So I think we are in many of our markets, we're the ones driving the race to zero, making sure the fees are super fair and transparent and easy for small merchants there. And you're right, in the US, it's still a bit more expensive, but I do see the same trend there.
Right. And of course, while we're on the subject of the United States, most people will have noticed that Donald Trump was reelected, and he has been talking, or there are certainly hopes in technology circles, that there will be a kind of bonfire of regulations, and this will be good for tech companies and the amount of money that they are making. Amid these hopes of lighter touch regulation, what changes, if any, do you expect for the world of financial services and fintech, that could, of course, impact the payment space?
It's a very good question. So first, I want to be pretty apolitical because it's very difficult to comment on the regime. But I think he named a number of people from the payments industry, like the CEO of Fiserv, the CEO of Shift4, and so on. That should definitely help get a more business-like focus into the administration. So that should also help on the regulation side.
Okay. I mean, do you have any particular hopes of what may happen? Because, of course, if one imagines that, large companies, and that would include perhaps some of those card companies we just mentioned, they may perhaps persuade, the administration or to not lower card fees, which would go against what it is that you just outlined that you're pushing in terms of getting those fees lower.
Well, I would hope for deregulation and obviously lowering fees, reducing bureaucracy, and just making a lot of the stuff much easier, which then also allows everybody to serve the merchant at a much lower cost.
Okay. And, talking about crypto, there's been a lot of talk about Bitcoin and crypto and everything else, again, with the new administration. If there are, changes the way that crypto is regulated, and perhaps that would encourage certain currencies, certain digital assets to be used more frequently, perhaps in terms of payments and the likes, would you be expecting any kind of impact on that side of things?
I think so. I'm very excited about crypto as technology. I don't think in the payment space it found the greatest real life application so far. And when you talk about regulation, obviously its money movement should be regulated similarly to any other payment scheme, because at the end it's just a different form factor on the exchange of money. So I think as the industry evolves and as we're getting more, as it's getting more widespread, I do think obviously it will be more and more similar to regular money transactions.
Okay, and of course, it's not just political changes that are going on. There's a huge amount of technological change as well, especially in terms of artificial intelligence or AI, which, for some is promising, to others is threatening to make the world of finance perhaps better for companies and consumers, or perhaps lead us on a path to Armageddon. Somewhere in between, hopefully, will the truth will lie. I mean, what from your perspective has it done so far for especially the payment space, and what are your hopes, expectations, or concerns about what it will do in the future?
I'm very much in the promising camp because I do to see that it can just make any business much, much better. You can be much more efficient. You can serve your customers much better. You can build much better solutions much faster at a much lower cost, and thereby ultimately serve merchants and consumers much better. I think the one point to point out is, especially for the payments industry, is risk and fraud, where obviously AI makes our business much better, but also gives the fraudsters in this world many more tools to attack companies. So there is always an arms race on making sure you're always one step ahead, which we're doing pretty well, I would think.
Right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned risk and fraud, and obviously there's also concerns about cybersecurity, and also new technological developments like quantum computing and how that could, unravel all of the, cyber security barriers that have been erected over the years. What are your thoughts about the dangers posed by artificial intelligence, quantum computing in terms of dealing with scams, dealing with, cybersecurity and other threats?
I think for anybody in the financial industry, that's a top of mind topic, because even before there was always scammers are pretty, let's say, creative people that find all kind of solutions, and now they just have a little bit bigger weapons. So you just need to build a little bit bigger wall to keep them out. So I don't see a major change, because the technology that the opposition has, you have as well, and it's just about let's say being one step ahead of them.
Right. Fine. And I mean, we talked about a little bit about, Apple Pay and big tech companies before. We've seen them increasingly getting into um, areas of finance, especially into the payment space. I mean, should fintechs be concerned? Should there be more regulation? I mean, I know obviously becoming a bank or something like that, or to compete with neobanks, is perhaps a little step too far in terms of the regulatory requirements. But for certain things, certainly in payments, it would seem that this is a field which could very well part of that pie, or an increasingly a larger amount of that pie could go towards big tech, perhaps to the detriment of fintechs.
I would think competition usually makes the market more lively and helps us build better solutions. So I do think we're pretty well positioned in that space, at least over the next 5 to 10 years. Who knows what happens in the long term? So I wouldn't be overly worried. And I do think any of those movements will only lead to better solutions for merchants and consumers alike. So I would rather welcome that move.
Okay. And as far as, sustainable finance goes in terms of having a higher purpose, doing, good and, doing good by the environment and also by consumers, things like financial inclusion and the like. I mean, should fintechs have a higher purpose in terms of what it is that they do? Or is it just a question of just, following your business model and making as much money for investors and other stakeholders as possible?
I do think for humankind, we all should have a higher purpose. We indeed actually pledged 1% of our revenue for ESG purposes, which we categorize into entrepreneurship, environment, and what's the third E, and so on. And and that's actually where we do see, after 10 years of kind of struggling for survival, we're now last 3, 4 years at a point where we really want to give back to society and invest in a number of social projects.
And just, finally in this section, I think you're based in London, is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
So you're based in London. London traditionally, certainly before Brexit, was viewed as being certainly Europe's, biggest fintech hub and up there on the world stage as well. Would London still be the best place to start a fintech? If you were starting one tomorrow, would London be your first port of call, or would, what's been going on with Brexit and the like since then, would that make you think, well, maybe Paris or Frankfurt or Amsterdam is a better bet?
Brexit was definitely a stumble, but I do believe in Europe, London is still a very good place to do business and to be centered for the financial industry. So yes, I'm still quite positive on the London outlook.
Okay, very good. So look, it's time now for our round of rapid fire questions. Are you ready, Mark?
That will be fun.
And given the pithiness of your answers thus far, I'm sure we'll get through many of these questions. Just one-word answers is all I'm looking for. I'm going to start the timer on my phone over here. I'm not checking my messages. And then as soon as the bell rings, we will stop and we'll get through as many of them as we can. Okay, so with that out the way, I will start the clock and away we go. What fintech segment has the biggest potential, in your view, over the next 5 years?
Payments.
What is the biggest pain point in your everyday financial life you'd like to see resolved?
Clunkiness.
Are bank bosses ready for the AI revolution?
Some.
Are customers ready?
Some. More than the bank bosses.
Have regulators in the US and EU kept pace with all the new possibilities and behaviors in the financial services industry?
Mostly so.
Have you personally ever invested in crypto?
Yes.
I think you've answered this one already. Are physical points of sales part of the future of finance?
Most definitely.
Are bank branches part of the future of finance?
Less so.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 the lowest, how would you rate the chances that in the next 10 years, one of the neobanks will be as profitable as a top-tier legacy bank?
10.
CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, will become a mainstream reality in America and in Europe?
Yes.
So that's a 10, is that?
Yeah, 8.
That you'll be able to open a crypto account at a top-tier bank?
7.
That SWIFT will still be the main tool for transferring money around the world?
9.
That a new card or non-card-based rival will emerge to challenge Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and the like?
SumUp.
And that wasn't one of the answers.
8.
And that we will see a top-tier bank or insurer bought by a fintech?
10.
Excellent. And on that bullish note, I'm afraid we are out of time for that round and also for our conversation. So that just leaves it to me to thank you, Marc-Alexander Christ, co-founder of SumUp, for joining me today. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's been a fun interview.
It has indeed. And for everyone else watching, we will be back again next time with another big name from the world of finance and technology. We do hope you'll be able to join us again then. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the Paris Fintech Forum YouTube channel and to follow us on X at Paris Fin Forum. That's all for now. See you next time. Bye-bye.